Hey, I'm bankruptcy attorney Matt McCune. Welcome to the Bankruptcy Show, the show your creditors really don't want you to watch or listen to. We're going to break down the facts about debt and bankruptcy, showing you what your legal rights really are and giving you the information that you need to take care of yourself and your family. Let's get into today's episode. All right, let's get into today's episode. Let's talk about Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You know, picking a favorite chapter of the bankruptcy code for a bankruptcy nerd, it's kind of like picking your favorite child. It's hard to say, but for me, without a doubt, Chapter 13 is my favorite chapter of the bankruptcy code. There are very few attorneys in the state of Colorado that has filed as many Chapter 13s as I've filed in the last 25 years. And they're not doing it the way I do it for the most part. There's a handful of us. So look, Chapter 13 is really option B for any consumer looking to file for relief under the bankruptcy system. Now, we just talked about Chapter 7 in the prior episode. If you haven't watched that one, watch that one before you watch this one. But if 7, one, you may not qualify, or it may not make sense, or you may just decide, hey, Chapter 13 allows me to do some cool shit I can't do in a 7. It makes more sense for me to reorganize under Chapter 13 of the Bankruptcy Code. And I always think it's a great idea that, look, if you're going to go this path, you might as well explore all options. And one thing to be aware of is, look, some bankruptcy attorneys, a lot of bankruptcy attorneys don't do Chapter 13. And so they're unlikely to tell you about all of your options in a Chapter 13 if they don't stand to make any money off you. So if you're looking to talk to a bankruptcy attorney, and again, I can always help you find somebody. If you're looking to talk to someone, make sure they're doing 7s and 13s so they can give you all your options. So look, Chapter 13 is loosely referred to as the wage earner, adjustment of debts with regular income, adjustment of an individual with debts with a regular income. Something like that is the official title of the code. Don't get hung up on that. You got to have some source of income, and that could even be Social Security or retirement funds or something like that. So look, Chapter 13 is long, right? That's the big negative. Time is the most valuable asset that we all have. Chapter 13 takes 3 to 5 years to get to discharge. You have to complete the planned payments. And so that becomes the first question is, well, how long am I going to have to be in bankruptcy for? And how much am I going to have to pay every month? Every month in Chapter 13, you have to pay the Chapter 13 trustee. How much that amount will be will depend on a variety of factors, and we're going to talk about all that sort of stuff. So first and foremost, who has to be in a 3-year, or who can do a 3-year plan, and who has to be in a 5-year plan. So, we've talked a little bit about the median income, right? Each state has their own qualification depending on the number of people in your household. If your debts, as determined by the bankruptcy code, the 6 months prior to the month in which we filed bankruptcy, that gross number doubled. If that number is above the median income for the household size in the state you live in, the bankruptcy code says, hey, you got to be in a 5-year bankruptcy. You got to do a 60-month plan. If your numbers are below, you can do a less than 5-year plan. They don't go any less than 3 years. So Chapter 13 is never going to be less than 3, longer than 5. There was some weird 7-year shit in COVID, whatever. That's done. So even some people that might be eligible for a 3-year plan because their income falls below the median income, they may want to do a 5-year plan anyway because you can lower the payment, right? The longer you have, well, sometimes it makes sense to do that because your payment could be less. If you can always do a 3-year plan, we try to. I mean, if you're eligible for it, I always try to encourage people, get this damn thing over with. Don't get me wrong, it's for a bankruptcy nerd, it's an exciting chapter. For the consumer going through it, it's a slog. It's a long way to go. What I love about Chapter 13 is I can give the debtor a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, the tunnel can be long, 3 to 5 years. But if you can get to that light, man, you've wiped out debt and you've probably done some really cool stuff along the way. We'll talk about that. The most common reason people are filing Chapter 13 right now is to save your home from foreclosure. So I fell behind on my mortgage, underemployed, unemployed for a bit, times got tight, whatever. A lot of stuff can happen. Let's say I'm now 20 grand behind on my mortgage and I got a foreclosure sale coming in the next few months. I'm going to lose my house. If I file a Chapter 13 any time before the foreclosure sale, before the sale has officially gone, and again, these can change district by district depending on how each state does a foreclosure, which is why you need to talk to a qualified bankruptcy attorney in your area. I can help you find one. If I file my bankruptcy before the sale date, I've stopped it, right? Bankruptcy is federal law that's going to trump any state court proceeding. So if you got a foreclosure coming, you should always be exploring Chapter 13. Here's the main reason. So I owe 20 grand on my mortgage. I file my bankruptcy today. I now have 3 to 5 years to pay that 20 grand back. I'm going to have to pay it back. It's owed. It's mortgages that I owe. I want to keep my house. I got to pay it. So if I file my bankruptcy today, in a month, in 30 days, I'm going to have a bankruptcy payment to the Chapter 13 trustee. How much that payment will be depend on a lot of factors. We'll talk about that. I then have to make my regular mortgage payment that comes due after my case gets filed, right? So it's October. Right, I filed my bankruptcy in October. I got to make the November 1 payment, and now I have an extra payment. I have an extra payment to the Chapter 13 trustee, but that allows me to catch up. And then, oh, by the way, I'm no longer paying credit cards, unsecured debt, and all that sort of stuff because I don't have to pay that shit. That stuff's going to go away in my bankruptcy. What percent I have to pay back in a Chapter 13 will depend on this thing called disposable income. We'll talk about that. That's a big part of the means test. I'm going to do a whole episode on the means test and disposable income. You know what? That's going to be the next episode. Next episode, means test. This thing sucks. I'll rant about it next episode. For now, let's keep talking about Chapter 13. So I can save my home from foreclosure, right, in a very unique way. If I file a 7, the sale is still off when my bankruptcy gets filed, but it's only going to be out for a couple months. There's this thing called an automatic stay, which is really the protection of bankruptcy. In a Chapter 13, it lasts the whole time, and I can cure that default on my house. In a Chapter 7, you buy yourself a couple months, but as soon as the bankruptcy discharges or the lender gets what's called relief from stay, the foreclosure is coming again. So people that want to save their house, Chapter 13 needs to be something you look at. You know, the normal stuff, you know, garnishments, you know, repo, all that sort of shit gets stopped with a Chapter 13. Let's talk about your car, right? Saving your house is cool. What else can I do with your car in a Chapter 13? Well, this is magic. Okay. If I'm upside down on my car, right? I bought a car 3 years ago for 40 grand. I still owe 30. It's worth 20, right? I'm upside down on my car. If you bought your car more than 910 days before you file your bankruptcy, which is 2.5 years ballpark, you can do what's called a cram down. This is magic, right? To cram down means to basically you pay the value. You bifurcate that secured claim that you owe on the car. What does that mean? You split it in two, basically. The scenario I'm talking about, my car's worth 20, I owe 30. Right? I'm upside down $10,000. I got negative equity of $10,000. I can split that claim in two through the magic of the Chapter 13 reorganization. I can put my car into the bankruptcy. It becomes part of my Chapter 13 payment, but I don't have to pay the 30 grand that I owe. I only got to pay what the car is worth, the value of it. In this hypothetical scenario, $20,000. So that means that other $10,000, well, that's unsecured debt. That's kind of like a credit card that, poof, is going to go away when I get my bankruptcy discharge. Now, I may have to pay a portion back to those unsecured creditors, and that would also share in that payout. But man, so you can save not only your house, you can save your car, and on your car, you can get a better deal. And we might be able to lower your interest. Chapter 13 is amazing, right? See what I'm talking about? Let's keep going. Let me blow your mind here. Let's talk about what's called a lien strip. And this is district by district too. So get a lawyer in your district. So let's say I bought a house a couple years ago. You know, COVID peak, prices went crazy. Guess what's starting to happen, right? My house is now worth 400 large. I owe 410 on my first mortgage. I've got this second mortgage out there for $50,000. I did an 80-10 or whatever when I bought the house. In that scenario, I'm now upside down on my first mortgage alone, right? But, you know, whenever I keep my house, man, where am I going to go? I don't want my kids changing school, all that shit. In the Chapter 13, if my second mortgage is what we call wholly unsecured, I can wipe that second mortgage out. I can strip it off. The way I explain it to the banks when they call and they say, "What the fuck's happening?" I say, well, equity is a rope, right? And I'm gonna throw you off the cliff. And if you don't have any equity to grab onto, so sad. Now, if I owe 410 on my house, and my house is worth $411,000, that second mortgage has some equity to grab onto, and I can't. It's all or nothing. You can't cram it down. You have to strip it off. And so take a wild guess what we can end up fighting over when we try to do this in Chapter 13. What's the house worth? So much cool stuff can be done in Chapter 13. Only the highest level Chapter 13 attorneys are going to understand this. Make sure you get a good one if you need one. All right, assets. So Chapter 7 is what we call the liquidation chapter of the bankruptcy code. The Chapter 7 trustee is the big bad wolf of the bankruptcy world. Now, I'm friends with a lot of them. These are good people. Everyone's just doing their job. But you try to avoid getting sideways with them. So let's say I got a boat. I love my boat, man. I take my kids out. We go fishing. But I got all this damn debt. And so things I might think about doing, I go, maybe I'll sell my boat to my buddy. No. Don't do that, right? Maybe I'll transfer it over to my brother. No. Don't do that. You're causing problems for everyone, including yourself. If you don't want to explore a Chapter 7, maybe you're doing a 13 anyway, but let's say all things being equal, you're like, I could do a 7, but fuck, man, I love my boat. This is what we do. In Chapter 13, you can save that boat. If you have a non-exempt asset, let's say my boat's worth $10,000. If I file a Chapter 13, all that really means is I can keep the boat. I just have to buy back from the bankruptcy estate the value of that non-exempt asset. I got to at least pay $10,000 to my unsecured creditors. That's the rule anyway. There's some tricks to be played where you can beat that number up even lower. So if you're worried about losing assets in a Chapter 7, you come to your lawyer, he's like, well, you go bankrupt, you're going to lose it, you're going to have to turn it over. And you say, well, is there any way to save this? And they don't say, we can save it in Chapter 13. Get the fuck out of there, man. Hire someone else because they don't do 13. They don't understand it. You can keep non-exempt assets in a Chapter 13. Now, you might have to pay a little bit more. Fair enough. But that is something to understand. So, who files for 13? I want to save my house, right? Get a better deal on my car. My income's above the median, so I'm not even eligible for Chapter 7. Maybe I got some debts that aren't dischargeable in a 7 that are dischargeable in a Chapter 13. I've been doing this a long time. Before the 2005 bankruptcy reform, we used to call the Chapter 13 the super discharge. Like, you wouldn't believe the shit you could get out of in Chapter 13 before October 2005. Look, you can still get out of more debt in a 13 than you can in a 7. It's not like it was pre-2005. But look, the government kind of wants you in Chapter 13 because it's presumed that you're paying back what you can afford to pay to your unsecured creditors. Maybe. So a 13 also falls off your credit quicker. That Chapter 7's going to be under credit report for 10 years past the point you file. That Chapter 13's going to be under credit report for 7 years past the point you file. So it falls off quicker, but it takes so damn long to get through. It's kind of weird, right? Let's say I'm in a 5-year bank. I filed my bankruptcy. I'm in no man's land for 5 years because I'm bankrupt and I don't have my discharge yet, right? Well, but then I get my discharge at year 5, now the damn thing's going to be off my credit within 2 years. So, it falls off quicker. But again, look, it's a long slog. You are in purgatory for the 3 to 5 years. You're not buying a house in the middle of a bankruptcy, okay? Getting a car is possible, not ideal. It can be done, but look, so it's, you don't do it unless you have to or have a damn good reason, but you should always explore all your options. And 13 can do so many cool things that people don't even think about. So, a lot of people that I talk to are on these, debt management plans or whatever. These motherfuckers are the scammers of the universe, in my opinion. It's... though you realize the first thousands of dollars you pay to these people when you go on these debt repayment plans, it goes to their fees, and you have no protection from your creditors. In the meantime, Wells Fargo is gonna be like, "Hey, man, we haven't been paid in a long time." You're like, "No, I'm paying XYZ Money Management, $500 a month, and say, hey, we haven't seen jack shit. We're going to sue you. And you go, no. They told me that they would deal with you. They're like, hey, I don't know what to tell you. You've been served. There's no legal protection in the debt repayment plan. It's bullshit, man. It's total bullshit. So, if you're going to explore that, I implore you to at least compare what a Chapter 13 would do. I get people come to me and say, hey, I want to pay everyone back. And I always say, no, you don't. That's not how I do it. But I have to respect the fact that some people just feel compelled to and I get it. I do everything I can to always talk my clients into taking the quickest, best way to get the discharge and move the hell on with their life. But some people do feel better about a Chapter 13 just because they're paying something back to the creditors. Now, I'm typically not even allowing those people to do that in my office, but psychologically, I have to acknowledge that a lot of times people do feel better about a 13 because there is a partial repayment. Now, don't get me wrong, my job is to screw them as much as I can, and I'm gonna do my job. But, they do get some money. Your unsecured creditors will typically share out of at least something from a pot. Now, 13 can be complicated. Some people pay all their debt back in Chapter 13, right? We call those 100% repayment plans. Why would you go bankrupt to pay 100% of your plan? Well, okay, let's say I got $80,000 in unsecured debt. I'm paying these people $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And I could do that for 2 to 3 years. And guess what? I still owe $80,000 because the power of 20+% interest is criminal. Compare that with 100% Chapter 13. In that same time frame, you pay all your debt back. You do not have to be in a bankruptcy for 3 to 5 years if you're paying everyone in full. I mean, that's the beauty of the 100% plan, and people don't explore that enough. Who rich people, high income people, like, look, man, sometimes it just makes sense to stop the insanity, get rid of ridiculously high interest rate. Pay everybody what you owe. If you're in a 100% plan, dependent district by district, like in Colorado, we'll pay them like 3 or 4%, something like that. And no one within the bankruptcy system can mess with you if you're paying 100%. Hello, I'm paying everything I owe. I'm just choosing to do it through a bankruptcy reorganization because it buys me time and protection, and it makes more sense for me, right? So, compare the money management to the Chapter 13. Talk to your attorney about that. Get your calculator out, pen and paper out, and run the math. There can be no doubt that filing for bankruptcy is the best financial decision that a person can ever make. In terms of math, right? I owed this, and now I don't. Now, it's more complicated than that, and I totally get that and respect that. But, if you're ever I just want to do what makes the most financial sense for my family, you need to be exploring all bankrupt options. All right. Okay. Cons of the 13: time, right? It takes too much time. I didn't talk about taxes real quick. I want to talk about that. Taxes that would survive a Chapter 7, if those are called priority taxes, you actually have to pay that back through a Chapter 13, which is sometimes to your benefit. You can stop a lot of the interest penalties, late fees, and all that sort of shit. District by district, some of these rules, but basically you get to pay them back at a way better rate. And that eats into the money you have to pay to your unsecured creditors anyway. And you're protected from the government while you're in it. Okay, cons, time, right? It takes too long. And then let's talk about the reality of a 13. Less than half of them make it, okay? The success rate on a Chapter 13, that's discharge, right? That's the goal, is less than 50%. So that's tough, right? Well, in my office, I can guarantee you're going to get the best possible option available. I can't guarantee success because it's out of my hands, right? Now, some of those cases people lose their job and they get converted over to Chapter 7. So, and so they didn't successfully complete the 13, but guess what? They got the discharge quicker, moved on with their life. But a lot of times people do get dismissed because, look, they stopped making the payment, right? You've obviously had a hard time paying your bills. The budget's tight. This term disposable income that I'm going to talk about in depth in the next video, means test disposable income rant for 20 minutes or so, right? It doesn't leave a lot of room. So if you're not able, in a 13, you got to get on a budget, right? You do have to change some bad habits. Now, you're not having to send all your disposable money to the credit cards every month in the form of interest, so that's good. But if you're not able to kind of get control of the monkey a little bit, it'll be tough. It'll be tough to successfully complete them. So that's something to be thinking of. And then, if your life changes, yes, can the plan collapse? Great. It might collapse into a converted 7, which is way better. Yeah, like families can save their home. Look, it's not that 13 is better than 7. Like, again, you always look at 7 first. But boy, I got to clean my language up. Here's what I love about Chapter 13. I can fuck with your creditors to your benefit way more in a Chapter 13 than I can in a Chapter 7. And if you got a kick-ass bankruptcy attorney, man, you could be amazed. You get all these random debt problems can kind of be bundled into one thing. And you're given this light at the end of the tunnel where the vast majority of them, if not all of them, are gone. All right. Next episode, means test disposable income. There's a lot to unpack there. And you know the drill. Subscribe to the channel. We're just going to keep pumping information to educate you on what your rights are. This is the stuff the banks don't. They don't want you to know this. You think your car creditor wants you to know how you can cram down and get your car at a discount with a lower interest? Hell no. You think that second mortgage wants you to know you might be able to throw them off the cliff? No, they do not. Now you know.